Shalom. First, I'd like to give all praises unto Yahweh, Ba'asham Yahweh Shai, Waharakah Kodash, and double honors unto the apostles and elders of Great Millstone. Honors to you brothers out there in the highways and the byways teaching this word in all sincerity and in truth. Now, this individual said, stop hitting your children. If they're old enough to use reason, use reason. So his reasoning is, when your child is disrespecting you or they cross some kind of boundary or they do something they're not supposed to be doing, you're supposed to reason with them, right? Don't hit them. That's his thing, yeah? If they're not old enough to use reason, they won't understand why you're hitting them. Showing you this guy doesn't understand the reason for hitting a child, right, may not be for them to understand the deeper philosophical reasons as to why you're setting that boundary. The reason you're beating that child is because they don't fully understand. Because if they understood or capable of understanding the deep philosophical reasons for that boundary, then they wouldn't cross the line, would they? The reason you're beating the child is because you're causing a trauma attached to that boundary to reinforce in their mind why they shouldn't cross that boundary until such a time as they understand why they shouldn't cross that boundary. Because if you're going to wait for them to understand why, then they're going to cross the boundary in the meantime, especially if you're dealing with small children, because small children are very carnal and they operate based upon impulsiveness, emotions. Children are very impulsive, and the way you cut out impulsive behavior is by traumatizing them, and that's what a beating is, a trauma. A beating sticks in the brain and it overcomes impulsiveness. So if you could, I'll give you an example. You tell a child sees the bin, it's intrigued by the bin. You know the bin is filthy and disgusting and they can catch disease or whatever it is from the bin. You can't always break down to that child the reason why they shouldn't touch that bin, because the child doesn't understand death. It doesn't understand sickness. It's not experienced enough to truly understand these concepts. All it understands is the bin is a certain color, there's something glistening, there's something about it they like, and impulsively they want to touch it. When you smack that child, and I'm not saying give him an uppercut, right hook, and a leg kick, that's abusive. When you smack that child, you shock that child, you create a trauma attached to touching that bin. The next time they see that bin and that impulsiveness riseth where, ooh, and they want to touch the bin, in their brain, the trauma triggers and it's like, oh, no, because they remember the beating. And that's what the beating is for. The beating is to override impulsive behavior and to establish a boundary. Okay. Now, this whole thing about beating children, you know, where are we at? 1 second. Right, this is what I want. Proverbs 22:15. Right, and before I say anything, listen, you got a whole first and second generation bunch of Jake, from Nigeria, and it ain't just Jake. They come to the West, and the first generation are used to a certain level of discipline and a certain level of respect that children show. Then you get the first generation, they start picking up Esau's philosophies, and you see them all over YouTube and all over these podcasts talking about how they were abused and how they don't want to do that to their children because they've been taught by Esau that receiving a beating as a child is abuse. All right, and so they slack up on the thing, and now we've got a whole generation of Jakes that are completely disrespectful, extremely impulsive. And the whole point of beatings is that beatings stop children from being impulsive, because the trauma of the beating causes them to pause when they reach boundaries. It overrides their emotional impulsiveness, which children naturally have, because they're not, you're never more carnal than when you're a child. You're very impulsive because you lack understanding completely. You lack experience. Children don't understand things. When the older you get, the more careful you get. The reason you go more careful is because you're more experienced and you understand the ramifications and consequences of things. You will hardly find an adult playing in traffic. The reason adults don't play in traffic is because the longer you live, the more people with brains you've seen splattered on the floor. A child hasn't experienced those things. They don't know the outcomes. So the impulsiveness and the emotion, and they could easily be carried away with things because there's no experience to show them, actually, no, this is what could happen and it's final. You understand what I'm saying? That's why children have a lot of stupid accidents more than you have to watch kids. Because if you don't watch them, they'll do a lot of stupid and impulsive shit that will get them hurt. That's a fact. Because they don't understand danger. They're not on that level yet. All right. Very impulsive. They're inexperienced and naive. Right. But when you get beat as a child, you start double thinking things before you do them because you're wondering where that next beating's gonna come from. Right. Now, this is Proverbs 22:15. It says, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child. The foolishness represents carnality, impulsiveness. Children are naturally very impulsive. They want to touch things, they want to go places, they want to explore. Right? If they feel a certain emotion, they want to express that emotion. They have no, they just want to express it. And they'll do it anyhow, which is why if you don't discipline a child, they lack emotional control. They're very impulsive, and they could do anything at any time and cross any boundary because there's not, even if you explain it to them, emotions can easily overthrow reason. Do you understand? Emotions can be more powerful than reason. But what's more powerful than reason and emotions is when your ass get beat. I'll give you an example. If you say you got a guy, right, and he does something to somebody, it's very easy for a man to get emotional and start acting crazy, right? Because he feels like it's okay. Put a gun in the other guy's hand, and all of a sudden, it changes the dynamic. All of a sudden, you start controlling your emotions because you know you could get hurt badly. The pain, the danger which is set before you, right, overrides your emotion because you know what that gun do. You understand what I'm saying? Well, it's the same thing with children. Children are very impulsive. You got a child, they want to touch the bin, they want to touch the bin. You tell them don't touch the bin. You told them the 50th time. You're wondering why after 50 times you're still telling them to touch the bin. The reason they're still touching the bin is not that they're willfully being disobedient. It's because literally, as a child, you're talking about a 2-3-year-old, they don't even remember that you said don't touch the bin. All they're caught up in that moment is the emotion and the impulsiveness, which is they like what the bin looks like. They're very intrigued by the bin, and so they want to touch it. And they don't care about nothing else in that moment. That's the very definition of being impulsive. Right? The word impulsive means acting or done without forethought. Yeah, that is the nature of a child. They're not thinking it through. Right? Foolishness is bound in the heart of the child, in their mind. Right? But when you smack that child, like they do it and they don't listen and you smack them, and I'm not saying give them a fly kick. The purpose of the smack isn't to destroy them. You give them a smack which is enough to get their attention. Right? That act of smacking creates a trauma in their mind which is attached to that event. So the next time they see that bin and they get those same emotions, there's an emotion now that overrides that wanting to touch it, which is the smack, and they'll hesitate to cross that boundary because they'll instantly remember the smack, because the smack is a massive event in their mind. And that is the whole purpose of it. Now, as they get older, they start to understand why you don't touch the bin, right? So they have those boundaries. But when they're young, they don't understand all that. So even more so, you need to smack them to get your point across. That's why the scripture says, foolishness is bound in the heart of a child, but the rod of correction shall drive it far away from him. Beatings as a child, right? And I don't mean abusive beatings, because there's a difference between use and abuse. You're not beating them to destroy them, you're beating them to reinforce discipline. There's a difference. And have people abuse children? Yeah, physically and verbally and emotionally. That happens. And that's not right. The Bible tells you, be not a lion in your house. No one is condoning the abuse of anyone. You shouldn't abuse anyone. But that doesn't mean that you can't apply the rod in correction in the right way and receive and achieve edifying results, right? And that's how it used to be. When you went to do something stupid, you hesitated because you knew, wait, there could be a beating coming off the back of this. These youths nowadays, they don't hesitate to do anything because they don't have that trauma. All right. And that trauma sticks with you even when you're older. Like your parents, even now with my dad, I don't disrespect my dad. Period. I don't disrespect my dad. There's no way. Like I still around my dad. Like I don't talk to my dad. Why? Because there's boundaries that have been set. Yeah, and my dad can't beat me up now. He's way older than me. He's oldish man, so to speak. But it's not about that. I still have that respect, and that trauma still with me, as it should be. You hesitate to talk or do certain things in front of your dad. You know what I mean? As it should be. Even elder people in general. You're supposed to have a level of respect for people that are older than you. These youths nowadays have no respect. It's gone because they didn't get beat and they don't get beat. But yes, you do need to, as the child is getting old enough, you do also need to reason with them because you also need to build up their wisdom, obviously. But beating has its place. It says, but the rod of correction shall drive it far from him. The rod of correction reduces impulsiveness. Now, you're always going to get a child who beating don't work on. And that's what in the islands we call that a bad breed. And we all knew them. Like when I was growing up, there's one youth, Aldo. Yeah. He was like a foster youth. And this guy used to get beat, man, all the time, man. Because you see, he was just bad, man. He used to run away and he used to lie, man. He used to lie so badly, man. And the way he used to lie, you would be with him when he did what he did. And then when he would lie, you would even believe the lie because of how sincere he was with his lying, man. Aldo, did you feed the goats? Yes, Mele. Me feed the goat. And all them thing they batak, yeah. And then you go Emily would go over by the tree and you could see where Aldo just dashed the food behind the tree, so he didn't feed the goats. I remember I would get beat, yeah, beat and runway and also, and then eventually he had to get sent back and whatever. But guess what? He come to England, and then he became West Midlands most wanted for armed robbery, torture, all because he was a bad breed. That's why in the law, if you had a boy, right, or a girl, because you get unruly women. You got a boy or a girl that don't take discipline from their parents. They don't take beatings, they don't take reasoning, and they just still impulsive and still just do what they want to do. When they get to a certain age, you could look it up what the law says you're supposed to do with that particular individual. That's what's known on the islands as a bad breed. There's nothing you can do with them. They're just wrong. They're a wrong un. There's no beating and no punishment you could give them that's going to change them. They're set to just do folly, to just do foolishness and be wicked. But most people are not like that. Most children will learn boundaries and discipline if you apply discipline in the correct way. Most children do not want to get beat. So because they don't want to get beat, if you beat them, it will reduce their impulsiveness. Not saying they're not going to make mistakes, but it greatly reduces your impulsiveness. Let me put down a disclaimer right now. If the law in your constituency is you're not supposed to beat your children, then don't beat your children in it. Obviously, that's they can't be helped in it. You're just screwed in it. You're gonna have to deal with it how you deal with it. But I'm just telling you what the scriptures say. Sirach 30:1. He that loveth his son causeth him oft to feel the rod. Like a lot of parents, the reason they don't beat their children is because they want to have this friend relationship with the child and they're scared that the child will hate them or no, when you beat that child, you're not beating the child to destroy them, you're beating them to build them up. So don't go overboard. You beat them with measure. And no one ain't saying, oh, they dropped a glass of milk. Like you get a lot of these abusive ghetto parents and they do beat their children for damn near because they're just upset. So that, like, say like let's say I bought my daughter a milkshake or something, and the milkshake costs like £5, and it slips out of her hand and she drops it. That's not cause for me to really give her a beating. It's an accident. Do you know what I mean? But because I'm angry about the £5, now I'm just gonna just lump her up for no, man. That's abusive. Like, you don't have to act like an idiot. Like, do you know what I mean? And a lot of these parents, especially these single mothers, a lot of them, they do abuse their kids because they hate their kids. Their kids are like a burden onto them, and they're in a bad situation because of the kids. So they take out all their anger and their frustration on the kids. You have fathers that do that too. They take out all their anger and their frustration on the kids. So they're not really beating them. They're looking for reasons to beat them. They're not really beating them as a form of discipline or no form of edification. They're being abusive. That does exist. But that doesn't mean you can't beat your kids. You know what I'm saying? But that's just them being abusive. And the Bible, as we're going to read, it says not to be a lion in your house. All right? You ain't supposed to be out to get your kids, man. You're like some predator, like some beast, trying to break them down. That's not the whole purpose. But it said, he that loveth his son causeth him oft to feel the rod, that he may have joy of him in the end. As they're growing up, and you've established those that respect, and you've established those boundaries, and you teach them the right way out the scriptures, at the end, they're going to grow up into a functional man or a functional woman with respect. But if you don't do that, you're going to spoil them, and their carnal nature will take over. All right? He that chastiseth his son shall have joy in him, and shall rejoice of him among his acquaintance. He that teacheth his son, see, you're supposed to teach your son, right? That's the wisdom, the reasoning. He that teacheth his son grieveth the enemy, and before his friends he shall rejoice of him. Though his father die, yet he is as though he were not dead, for he hath left behind him that is like himself. Right? So that's why the most important thing you can give your children is an example. Jake, forget that. They think the most important thing that you can give your child is money and material things. Actually, the most important thing you can give your child is an example, because you basically gonna copy yourself over to your children. And that's why we're in the situation we're in, because you got broken individuals coming together, creating a broken household, which creates broken children. Because if you're broken, your children are going to be broken. That's why the scripture says, as the mother is, so is her daughter. So the most important thing you can actually provide your children is an example. And copy that, so that they can copy that right example onto themselves. Right? You see all the time. How many men you know, yeah, that them man are on the roads doing madness and their dad was on the roads doing madness? It's a fact. If their dad was in jail or their dad was doing madness on the roads, 9 times out of 10, whether the dad's even around or not, whether they've never seen, they could have never met their dad in their life. As long as they hear that their dad was on madness on the road, 9 times out of 10, they end up doing madness. It's because they're looking for an image to copy, and naturally you're going to copy the image of your father, or you're going to copy the image of your mother. So the way you operate and carry yourself is going to trickle on down to your children. The way you behave around them, the way you act, the decision you make, they see it. They see it and they watch and they copy everything. And that's why it's a huge responsibility to have children, because you really you have to discipline yourself first in order for them to have discipline. All right? Because they're going to copy you. All right? And the balance, Sirach 4:30, be not as a lion in thy house, nor frantic among thy servants. It's not everything you're going to beat your kids for. That's not the only solution. Every problem ain't a nail that you got to hit with a hammer. And everything should be done within reason. Because isn't that the way justice is? Justice is a scale. The punishment is supposed to match the crime. So we're not saying, you know, he didn't wash the dishes, so you break his arm, like, you know what I mean? Some stupid shit. Like, come on, behave yourself. That's crazy, right? So no one isn't condoning abuse, but that's what these people try and do. They try and mix up, use and abuse together. No. All right. I was beat when I was a child, but I wasn't abused. Far from it. I was well taken care of. My grandmother, my dad, my granddad. I wasn't a youth that needed to get beat that much because it was scared of lash. So I wasn't on the mad impulsiveness, and I wasn't just rude because I knew what was gonna come behind that. And I weren't trying to. I'm not known for being a disrespectful youth. That's just how it is. So I didn't need to get a lot of beatings, and the beatings that I took, I had to learn from them. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying, man. Anyway, yeah, be not a lion in thy house, nor frantic among thy servants. Frantic meaning you're hella panicky, hella suspicious and paranoid. So you're just doing madness. You know what I mean? Like calm your ass down. But still, you do have to apply discipline in your house and balance, man. But this ideology that these men are promoting, where it's like, you know, you got hit, so that's why you're hit. You're damn right I got hit. And that's why I'm hitting my children, because I'm following tradition. And the tradition was working. One of the things that they took out of the schools was corporal punishment. When I was in Montserrat, man, them schools was run proper. As soon as I come to England and nobody weren't getting beat, I couldn't believe the behavior I was seeing in the classrooms. And not just that, obviously, we was a lot more local. Things should be a lot more local, man. The people that, if you're gonna have schools, the people that's running the schools should be relatives. They should be family. They should be known. Yeah, not how it is in this society where it's all corporate and the people that's raising your kids in school, you don't even know them really. They're strangers. It's not really how it's supposed to be. But I'm saying a lot of, removing corporal punishment from the schools took a lot of discipline out of the schools. Now, was there abuse in the schools before? Yeah. But like I said, the abuse is what needs to be addressed, but not the discipline in itself. All right. So, Lord willing, that was edifying. And like I said, if you're in a constituency where you're not allowed to beat your child at all, then don't do it, okay? Because we ain't trying to go to jail, because that's not going to help your kids either. That's even worse, yeah, because then they're going to go into the foster care and probably get a butt plug up their ass, you know what I'm saying? So keep your kids out of foster care, but we're just saying what the scriptures say. Shut up.